10 bizarre and unexplained UFO encounters. Hold the phones. Get Mulder and Scully. These UFO and alien encounters are crazy enough to have been featured on the X-Files, except they're totally real. From simple sightings to being forced to get freaky, we are proud to bring you bizarre and unexplained UFO encounters. Hold on to your seats because you're about to be taken on a ride that's out of this world.
Hey guys, it's me, Ben, from the channel All Things Human, but more on that later. First, let's get to the video.
Number 10. Barney and Betty Hill. Perhaps one of the more well-known UFO sightings out there is the case of Barney and Betty Hill. The Double B Hills were driving home from a spectacular trip to Niagara Falls in 1961 when they happened upon something strange and a bit terrifying. A light in the sky that kept getting closer and closer until it appeared as a vast craft hovering above their car. Barney, being a man, stepped out of the car and looked at the ship with binoculars and saw 11 humanoid figures in shiny black uniforms and capes looking at them. He quickly got back in his car and drove home, but the 4-hour trip mysteriously took 7 hours, and B squared couldn't account for the lost time. To make matters stranger, their clothes were torn in places and they began having vivid abduction dreams, and later Betty was able to produce a star map which she said she had been shown by alien creatures. Both Hills were respected members of the community and had no reason to make up such a story, but it's unknown what indeed happened that night. Number 9. Antonio Beulis Beulis. In Brazil, in 1957, a farmer by the name of Antonio was in his field plowing at night because it was too hot to do it during the day. He looked up in the sky and saw a strange red light that gradually came closer and closer until it was pretty much right on top of him. Antonio attempted to flee on his tractor instead of running, which probably would have been faster, but he still failed. He says he was taken aboard the ship by a humanoid covered with a gel-like substance and forced to get intimate with a female alien to produce little man alien hybrids. He was eventually returned to his field about 4 hours after being taken and resumed his life a little less than unharmed. He was nauseous, had headaches, and burns across his body, and a doctor eventually diagnosed him with radiation sickness. He survived though, and went on to become a lawyer, and has always stuck to his story. With the number of people he was able to convince with his story, we want him on our side in a court of law. Just saying. Number 8. Colonel H.G. Shaw. So, this was one of the first known cases of an alien encounter, and it happened way back in 1896. Our star of this story was accompanied by a companion and traveling by horse and carriage to Lodi in California when the horses startled because they saw 3 beings standing at the side of the road. The creatures were reportedly 7 feet tall, slender, humanoid, and bald except for a velvet down that covered their bodies. They didn't speak coherently, and Shaw reported that they warbled amongst one another as if chanting. He also stated that they held glowing lamps that were unnaturally bright and that the creatures were indescribably beautiful. They attempted to lift and abduct Shaw, who proved too heavy, so they took off with Shaw in pursuit. Whether real or not, it sucks that he had to let everyone know that he was too big and hefty to be lifted by 3 large humanoids. Number 7. Jesse Long. A man who says he's been abducted numerous times throughout his life goes by Jesse Long and claims it all started when he was just 5 years old. Jesse says he and his brother were playing in the woods when they stumbled across what looked like an unfinished round structure and were then confronted by a tall figure that paralyzed both boys. They were taken aboard a ship and experimented on. Jesse even had an implant put in his left shin. The implant was removed some years later and tested. The test revealed that it had a remarkable composition and had unique surface characteristics that can't be explained. Jesse claims that he'd been abducted lots of times since the initial time in 1957, and says he's even forcibly had a certain substance extracted from his downstairs parts that's been used to crossbreed children with female aliens. He says he's been presented with his children by the beings from above and insists that he's not lying. well, we'll have whatever he's having. Number 6, Roswell. We've all heard of Roswell. It's like the first real alien story out there and kicked aliens and UFOs into the limelight way back in 1947. Mac Brazel, a rancher from New Mexico, and his son went to check on his sheep during an intense lightning storm. He says that he ended up stumbling across an alien ship that contained the pilots' bodies. This was all on June 14, and being in a hurry to get his rounds done and to check on his sheep, he left the craft. But he did end up mentioning it to his wife. On July 4th, over 3 weeks later, his wife and daughter went to the spot and retrieved a bunch of the debris from the crash. The next day, Mac mentioned to the sheriff that he might have found a UFO, and the sheriff relayed the info to the army. And the rest is history. Not much more is known about Roswell after that, besides that the army took over and tried to keep it as hush-hush as possible. Who leaves a crashed alien craft just sitting in a field for 3 weeks though? Those must have been some really important sheep. Number 5, Levelland, Texas. So, this here story wasn't believed by the sheriff at the time it was reported, but it got a second look after multiple reports of the same thing began happening all around Levelland, Texas. In 1957, 2 men drove upon a blue flash of light near the road, which subsequently passed above them, causing their truck to die and one of them to hit the dirt. A sound that kinda resembled thunder ensued as the rocket-shaped vehicle sped by overhead, and then the truck came back to life. The officer who took the call blew it off as a prank, but like we already said, he began receiving calls from people with similar stories all over the area, so had to take it seriously, at least a little. The story has never been explained and has become a national mystery. An early case of police discrimination? We think so. Number 4, UK UFO. Footage of what appears to be a UFO over Bracknell in Berkshire surfaced in 2017, which left more questions than answers. Bob Wise, a resident in Bracknell, recorded the incident using his phone and said it occurred around noon on a hot and sunny day. He says the object he spotted was stationary at first, but began pulsing and getting brighter. He didn't immediately chalk it up to being a UFO. Initially, he thought it might be some experimental military aircraft, but changed his mind when he noticed the craft was spherical while editing the footage. He also said that the flashing of the object reminds him of the effect produced when burning magnesium back in school. Wise claims that the footage he shot is genuine and untouched, and sort of alluded to the fact that it was no surprise to see an aircraft he didn't recognize in the area. Bracknell has become infamous for its UFOs in recent years. It's pretty much old hat, isn't it, Wise? Number 3, McMinnville Photographs. A long time ago, on May 11th, 1950, a woman named Evelyn Trent was feeding her rabbits when she noticed a strange, unexplainable hovering saucer floating above her farm and notified her husband. Her husband, Paul, ran inside and grabbed his 35mm camera in hopes of capturing the craft on film, which he did, and that's what you see here. Paul was able to get 2 decent quality photographs of the saucer, and they've become some of the most famous UFO photos of all time. The craft then bolted away to the west, leaving behind not a single trace. Scared that he had inadvertently taken pictures of a secret military craft, Paul kept the photos to himself. That is, until he couldn't help but blab to the local banker, who decided to display them in the bank's window. After that, the story was picked up. Stories were run in newspapers and magazines, and the rest is history. Many skeptics believe it's a hoax, but who's to say there weren't really aliens just chilling and watching Evelyn feed her rabbits? We all watch weirder stuff on YouTube all the time. Number 2, Travis Walton. If you haven't heard about this incident, then you probably don't know much about UFOs. Let us learn you some knowledge, okay? First off, the year was 1975, and 6 forestry workers were riding in a truck while out doing things that logger types do when they came across a saucer-shaped object hovering off the ground nearby. Travis Walton jumped off the truck and approached the craft. probably in some show of manliness for his friends, and got himself knocked on his butt. His scaredy cat friends took off, leaving him behind, but they then decided to return to retrieve their fearless leader. But Walton had went missing. He claims he woke up in what resembles a hospital where he was observed by 3 short, bald creatures. They left and a helmeted being took him to another room where more people put a mask on his face, causing him to pass out. He reappeared in our world 5 days after disappearing in a town 2 miles from where he had been taken and was picked up at a gas station. He and all of his friends passed a lie detector test regarding the incident, and all of them stick to their stories to this day. Either as aliens or as acid man. Number 1, the Bermuda Triangle. Let's visit this strange place that's already shrouded in mystery and examine a couple of its alien claims. Alright? Did you know that the Christopher Columbus actually wrote of strange lights in the distance as he was sailing across the ocean in 1492? In fact, the lights were observed by crew members aboard the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. He wrote that it looked like a small wax candle that rose and lifted up, which to a few seemed to be an indication of land. His compass also went on the fritz throughout the voyage and gave him erratic readings. Another famous alien story in the Bermuda Triangle is that of Flight 19. A whole group of 5 torpedo bombers went missing into the triangle in 1945, and none of the 14 airmen or 13 crew members, nor the planes, have ever been found. It's believed that disappearances could have had something to do with aliens, as many UFOs have been spotted in the area over the years. It's long been regarded as a hub for alien activity, and whether or not it is, we don't know. We do know that the strange occurrences in the triangle have never fully been explained, so they remain a mystery to this day.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then check out my channel, All Things Human, right over here.